Welcome to episode 289 of Global from Asia interview series, and we have another great one. Everyone likes China stories. We have an epic one today. Let's tune in.
Welcome to the Global from Asia podcast, where the daunting process of running an international business is broken down into straight-up, actionable advice. And now, your host, Michael Michelini.
Did somebody say I was going to Manila and that a volcano would erupt upon arrival? Well, that's what happened to me just about a week ago. I mean, this show, the previous show was already going online when it happened last Sunday. About an hour away from Manila, a volcano decided to erupt. I remember being over to Tagaytay back in my earlier days in Manila in 2009, 2010. I remember taking a trip with a friend, Mike Moe, over there and seeing it, and he's like, this volcano hasn't erupted in so long, it's dormant. I remember everybody saying it's dormant. Well, this volcano is not dormant, okay? I've been choking on ash. Mark from Alpha Rock, I'm here and helping out the Alpha Rock team for a special intensive project while my wife and kids are in mainland China in the freezing cold. I'm in a hot volcano, but gave us some of these air masks. Seriously, my chest, I don't know if it's just the rough travel I had coming here from multiple connections and layovers, or if it was the volcano, because they were so close together. I'm wearing these masks now. Got a couple of different styles, white or black, depending on my feeling or the intensity of the volcano or the air or the pollution or the traffic. People have been sending me messages like, Mike, the pollution and the problems seem to follow you. I left for burning season in Chiang Mai, go into polluted Shenyang, and then I come down to a volcanic eruption in Manila, Philippines. It's funny, somebody is watching, but you are listening, and thank you for that, and you're listening to my blah, 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 a little bit of the intro, but I think I'll throw some more of this at the end, because we have an amazing, amazing guest today. Peter, I mean, he's an amazing entrepreneur, much better than me, and he's been doing it so much longer. He's in Suzhou, China, which is a little bit out west of Shanghai, and he's done so many businesses himself. He's helped so many other people set up in China. He gives us insights that there are ways to succeed as a Western company in China. You know, I know there's all these war stories and stories of people coming and getting their butt kicked and leaving, but he has some insights to say how maybe that doesn't have to happen to you and your company. So I'm really happy to have Peter on the show. Let's tune in. Do you enjoy Global from Asia or the GFA show? If you want to upgrade to GFAVIP.com, that is just what the doctor ordered. We just had an amazing members call, or our mastermind. We had great Tom Hogan's on the show. Thanks, Tom, for coming on and sharing. And it was a great group of people from all over the world, of course, in Asia. And it was fun. And we have a new forum we just upgraded and many other amazing features. If you enjoy what you listen to and want to connect with me and many others in the community in a private setting where private things that I'm a little bit shy to say outside of the forum are happening, check it out at GFAVIP.com. Okay, thank you everyone for tuning in on our Global from Asia podcast. There's always guests that have been on my wish list to come on the show, and some come sooner than later, but we have a great one today. Peter Rasmussen. He is from Asia based. He's another old school China business expert from Denmark who's gotten a whole list of ventures, and we've had a pleasure to meet in different places in China and Asia. It's great to have you on the show, Peter.
Thank you very much. Great to be here with you.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And we met. I remember you visited Chiang Mai, and we got to meet at a meetup, and then we've met at some events. And you have so much experience here based in Suzhou, China. For those that might not know, it's somewhat near Shanghai, and I'm up recording today in my wife's hometown, Shenyang, which is not so famous at all, but basically the northeast of China, and it's cold and snowy, and hopefully both our internets are stable enough, but Peter's helping out recording on his side. And so before we get into the interview, Peter, there's so much.
That's
It's so overwhelming the amount of stuff we could talk about. Do you want to just give us a quick intro, a little bit more about you and your background?
Yes, sure. I'm Danish, as you explained. I have been in China since 1987, and I run my own company, Asia-based Law and Projects. It's a China entry consultancy that I established all the way back in 1994 here in Suzhou. And we help foreign companies and foreign entrepreneurs getting established and achieving success in China. We had our 25th anniversary in November last year, and we can look back on a long track record of having helped over 300 foreign companies starting here in China. And of course, when you help foreign companies starting, you get ideas to start your own companies too. And so it has happened also for me that I've started some companies of my own, 5 of them. Amongst them is, of course, Asia-based Law and Projects, the company I work with every day. But we also have a business incubator in Shanghai called DI Asia Base. It's a business launching platform for enterprises. And I have invested in a pig farm in Lianyungang, north of Suzhou in the Jiangsu province. A very big one of the biggest pig farms in China, and the biggest Danish pig farm in the world, with 350,000 slaughter pigs per year. That project is a whole topic for a podcast on its own, I guess. And I've also recently established a seed capital fund to invest into startups, especially in alternative proteins. And that is because China is in a situation now where they lack protein because of African swine fever that has taken out a large part of the Chinese swine population. So China needs meat, and you can either grow more meat in China, which is difficult right now for the Chinese. You can import, or you can look to alternatives. And our little seed capital fund will assist when and if somebody is looking into alternatives to meat.
Yeah, I mean, it's very fascinating. I know I remember when we first met, we were talking about the pig farm and 350,000. I'm trying to take some notes as we chat, but it's very true. I am in Shenyang and pork is expensive. Our whole family is talking about increased prices of pork. And for listeners that might not know, Chinese love pork, right? Seriously.
Definitely. China is the biggest market for pork in the world. Half of the world's pork is consumed in China.
Amazing. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a good place for you and your platform to be, especially food and foreigners a lot of times like are stubborn, and we want to do like industries in China that Chinese either don't allow or we can't compete as a foreigner, right? But I think food is a great industry in China for foreigners, right?
It is, and it's a place where there's actually space for us to succeed. It's been hard, or it has become hard to succeed competing with the Chinese in tech. Tech is a sexy industry for foreign investors. Farming is not. Pig farming is not very sexy. And as such, it has been overlooked by a lot of people and investors in China. But it is an area where China lags behind the West in efficiency. And therefore, there's with Western efficiency in the Chinese market, with the Chinese price level, it's possible to make profits in China, especially now when the price is so high. The price has almost doubled over the last 12 months, I think it is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm based in Thailand or in Southeast Asia now more, and yeah, we came back. We've been here for a while, and my wife's been talking about it, and the family's talking about it. It's true, but I think that usually the not sexy industries are the ones that are where the money is, as you seem to be saying today, and it's something we learn also with Amazon selling online for listeners. Sometimes everybody wants to do the cool new iPhone accessory or the cool new product, but the boring stuff is usually where the money is, seems like in most industries.
It is, yes, definitely.
So there's so much I can talk about. So your first, let's start with first business. 1980. Well, first, how'd you get to China in 1987? I think I'm sure listeners are wondering.
Yes, it's a long story, but I'll give you a short version of it.
Yeah, I could imagine.
I've always been an entrepreneur. I started my first startup when I was only 6 years old, a little waste paper collection company that I ran under guidance from my father. And if we fast forward, in 87, I took a bachelor's degree in engineering, in electrical engineering from University of South Denmark. And right upon graduation, I received a money prize for my final project. It was a prize for an invention, actually. So there was a little amount of money there that I could use on further studies. And at the same time, I chaired a very, very big project in our school. It was construction of the first solar-powered car in the world, actually, or one of the first cars in the first batch of solar-powered cars in the world. It was back then where we hadn't seen even electrical cars on the streets anywhere. But in Australia, they decided to set up a race for solar-powered cars. Try to imagine that at the time, the only time you saw a solar panel or a solar cell was in a Casio sports watch or something like that. Nobody could imagine that you could drive a car on electricity, let alone on solar power. But I built, together with a team of students in the university, a very nice solar-powered car, and we got it sailed on a boat to Australia. It took 7 weeks at the time. And I used those 7 weeks to travel, and we had freedom. We had sponsored tickets from one of our sponsors, and we had freedom to travel as we wanted through Asia down to Australia. And I chose China at a time when, if you looked at a satellite map of China in the evening, you would probably not see more lights than you would see if you look at a map of North Korea today. China was not very developed back then in 1987. But I visited, and I visited, amongst others, this experimental capitalist laboratory called Shenzhen. It was an area at the time that was fenced off in barbed wire and with checkpoints where you could get in and out by showing your passport. But once inside this laboratory where they could experiment with capitalism, you saw a freedom, and you also felt that China was ready to boom, not only inside these experimental laboratories, that was what they called special economic zones, but even also outside of these. And I wrote a letter home to my father. I said, I'm in China, and it seems to be the place to be the next 25 years. That was in 87. And I didn't waste time. After I came back to Denmark, I packed my stuff and came over here. But I decided to actually go to Taiwan first, because I wanted to learn Chinese. The reason was that there was a Danish company who wanted to employ me as a chief representative in China, but they demanded that I spoke Chinese. So that was my push. So I did then get a job for this company after I've learned Chinese for a year in Taiwan. And I worked first of all with selling for them in China and in Taiwan, but later also to establish their first factory here in mainland China. Maybe I should say that when we competed in Australia against the car makers with our solar car, Ford and General Motors, Mercedes, Mitsubishi and others, and we actually did really well. We beat companies like Mitsubishi and Mercedes. We even beat MIT also in that race. So that was a fun thing to start out with in a career out here.
Yeah, there's so much to pick up from that and ask, but one I have is, you're not the first one that I've talked to that's these old school China hands that's spent time in Taiwan for a while and then came in. Is that, I guess, why? Maybe just generally why, or what's the reason? Because it feels like I've talked to a lot of people like you that have been here for in the 80s and 90s, and they were in Taiwan a lot, or and then came. What's the reason for that? Was there more industry there, more things, or the visa?
I think we all wanted China actually, but learning Chinese in mainland China at the time was not easy. It was not that long after the Cultural Revolution, and there was still a hesitance to speak English with foreigners, and there weren't many at all who wanted to communicate with us. So Taiwan was the place. I learned that before I came, even from other foreigners having been here and learned the language. They said, go to Taipei, to Mandarin Training Center in National Normal Taiwan University. That's where you learn the language. And so I did. And I met a lot of other foreigners there, of course, wanting to learn Chinese, but all with the same goal of actually somehow trying to make a career here in the mainland.
Interesting. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, because I mean, I've definitely had some other great. I wish I could have recorded a lot of these conversations I've had with people in China so early, but it's great that you can help clarify that because I've heard that a lot. So that was why. Um, let's move to your first business in China. You said 94 in Suzhou.
Yes. I already told you I was hired by a Danish company as a chief representative, Danfoss, in the beginning. And for them, I had the task of establishing a company in China. At the same time, they also told me that with a bachelor's degree in engineering, I wouldn't qualify as a general manager of a subsidiary company of this foreign company. It's a company called Danfoss. And they said to me, if I would want to also manage the company I was establishing, I would have to take an MBA or something like that. It was before the internet actually, and I didn't want to take a distance learning MBA. I thought that wouldn't be me to do such a thing. To do such a thing, so I did it the hard way. I got admitted to National Taiwan University, where I studied MBA for 2 years, full-time in Chinese. And at the same time, I was to establish this company for Danfoss in China. Danfoss wanted the company established, and the school didn't want me to have a job besides the studies. And I was actually called in by the dean to her office and told that it was either the school or the company. And I didn't want to give up either. And I got this good idea that I could maybe merge the two. So I got permission from Danfoss to take this entire establishment project in China into the business school in Taipei. And the school accepted. So for a couple of years, we turned that school upside down with Danfoss projects. Everything from market research to studies of legal issues, to draft contracts, to making a business plan, making budgets, you name it. Everything you need in order to get a company up and going, we did on paper first in the school. And right when I graduated with my MBA, Danfoss was ready, or should have been ready to establish in China, but took a time out. And there was another company that called me, and I still remember that phone call. They listed things they needed done in China. That was market research and legal studies and business plan and so on. What they did was basically reading up my diploma line by line. So I said yes to doing that and quit working for Danfoss while they had this timeout. So I started in China setting up this other company. And very soon thereafter, Danfoss came back and told me that the timeout was no longer a timeout. They were ready to go again. So I stood there with two companies that wanted to establish. Then came a couple of other companies that had heard about what I was doing. And so all of a sudden I had 4 or 5 companies that wanted to establish in China at the same time. So instead of saying yes to just one of them and no to the others, I decided to set up my own company. We are now in 1994. I started Asia Base, and it is a business consultancy focusing on helping foreign companies doing exactly these things I just mentioned. Today it has turned more into being a law firm with a strategy attachment, so that we help our clients not only to get legally established, but also to achieve a good position in terms of costs and competitiveness in China. So that's the story behind Asia-Base. Asia-Base has since then helped, I think it's 315 foreign companies getting started in China, with that whole package of looking at the market, looking at the opportunities, making a business plan, getting legally established and started up. Many of them, and by far most of them, have had success also. So I'm pretty proud of that. And in that process, of course, then I learned also how to do it and set up a couple of companies on my own, as I mentioned earlier.
It's great. I mean, I think probably listeners are wondering, how can they replicate this, or what industries? Maybe is it an industry thing, or is it what would you say would be you've seen most succeed, some not succeed? Obviously there's public case studies we both know we could talk about that have been big failures that are foreign companies in China. Is there some kind of trend or insight you could share what makes it work or not?
Yes, I mean, first of all, you have to look at the industry at the right time, the right industry at the right time. And I've been here ever since the talk was about that Chinese needed, or every Chinese family should have a refrigerator and a television. That was what the talk was in the early 90s. So, and then there were other people saying, hey, how would that be possible? Where would they get all the electricity from? That was the talk of the day in the early 90s. But as we've all seen, that they solved their problems, right? So in the beginning, I assisted companies transferring production lines for white goods, refrigerators, and so on. Then came a new wave with foreign furniture, machines, building materials, and then came the telecom bubble in 2001, but a lot of industries entered during that time. Then came shipbuilding, automotive, and safe food, and you name it. So it's about being in the market at the right time with the right product, and that's one success factor. Another one is that you can compete with the Chinese if you're focusing on the Chinese market. And that has to do with cost level and understanding how things are really done out here. But most companies that came in over the 25 years I've been in this business, most companies have come to China actually with a dream of targeting the Chinese market, but then giving up and instead targeting the world market. And there they were competitive because they could lower the costs compared to abroad when they came to China with their production. And then they could sell back home or sell to the world markets with a higher margin than they could from their original home base. So that's become the business model for many, many of the foreign companies coming out here. Simply replicating what they had at home in a factory in China, finding out that it's much cheaper, still unable to enter the Chinese market, but able to compete in other markets with a product that's produced at lower cost.
Which makes sense. It's true. I mean, I'll have to admit, I've had my share of things didn't work out in China, and a lot of times, everybody has that China dream, and we can, especially the internet world. I mean, I think China doesn't really. Have you worked with internet companies in China, foreigners? I mean, I feel like that one might be a really difficult one.
It is, yes. I haven't had the chance to work with internet companies, but I worked with a lot of tech companies in the IT industry, mostly producing hardware. And actually, the story is to give an example of what I just said. In and around 2001, there was a large number of foreign companies entering China, catering for the telecommunication, mobile telephone networks and handsets. Ericsson, Nokia, Alcatel, and what they were called at the time. There were many, many of them. And at one point in time, Asia-Base, my company, helped some 20 companies that were coming to China just to cater for these big ones, the big international ones in the Chinese market. We helped them getting established here. And they came because they were forced to by these big international companies. But very quickly, after they arrived, came the IT bubble and a lot of troubles around that. So these international companies were faced with pressure to localize their sourcing, their supply chain. So these 20 companies that I helped in here, plus all the many hundreds that I didn't help, they came out here believing that they would now produce for the big international companies in China, but were faced with losing their business, this business to local Chinese companies. And so what could they do? They couldn't really sell into the Chinese market, so they started to sell to their home markets. And it's a very good example of this situation where you come here, you come for the local market. In this case, it was for other international companies in China, finding out that you are not competitive against the Chinese, but then you at the same time you find out that you are competitive against yourself at home, so you can sell into the world markets with a okay product at a much lower cost.
It makes sense. I mean, I guess China makes us lean and mean one way or the other, right? So you could leverage that. I mean, right? We've all had to learn to be smart, savvy business owners to do business in China. I mean, would you say, it kind of leads into the next topic. Hopefully it's okay. I hope you're okay. I know I bounced around a little bit, but yeah, I think
No
then and
problem.
now, especially, how would you say it is? Is it easier, harder? I mean, it's just different. I mean, I've read one of your books. I look forward to your future book, where you said, like, back when you came in China, you just had to have some Chinese skills and maybe some basic connections back home, and you could make a business. I think that obviously it's not as true now. Of course, anything is possible, but you know, maybe just discuss what you had then to start, maybe versus what you think people need now to start, or we could break that into a few parts. It's a big question.
Yes. I mean, to start here, you need to have an advantage of some kind. And if you're going for the Chinese market, you better have some advantage that includes also understanding the market here. But for me, my customers were all foreign. So I quickly established myself as the saying goes, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. I was this foreigner out here who had already set up a couple of companies, first for Danfoss as a job, while I was also studying, but later also for other companies. And then also being able to speak Chinese. After all, at that time, there weren't many Chinese speaking English, so we had, us who wanted to do something out here, we had to learn the language. So I had the ability to speak in Chinese, also because I took my MBA in that language, plus these couple of experiences setting up foreign companies. So in the land of the blind, I was the one-eyed man. That was my advantage at the time. It's getting much harder now to have an advantage or to establish an advantage when you want to enter the market here. You're up against Chinese companies who understand their market way better than we do, their culture much better. But such advantages could be that you know the market abroad. If you want to do cross-border business, that's hard for the Chinese to compete against. If you understand your market abroad and you've established a supply chain here in China, that's definitely one of the areas where you can establish an advantage. But it can also be an ability you have, a skill. And it can be relations that you have established to customers or to suppliers that others cannot copy easily, or combinations of that, actually.
Okay. This is good. I'm just taking a quick bullet notes myself, and some more follow-up. I think it's gotten, the environment is really changing, and you mentioned the pig costs increase. I mean, I think that there's a lot of inflation. Would you say that? I mean, maybe the pig is a little bit different because of but costs have really increased in China. You must have seen it then to now, especially even I noticed it over 10 years, or maybe I was in the hyper increased price. Is it inflation, or what would you say that is, or just developing economy, or?
It is the developing economy. It is China wanting to raise the level, the standards of living in the whole population. But I also want to say that I think, although costs have increased, also the quality that follows has increased, and even more than the costs actually. You get more for the money today when you hire Chinese people to work for you in the company. People joked about it back then in the 90s. They said you have to hire 5 Chinese for every foreigner you hired. So they said, so you had 1 working and 4 looking, or whatever it was. But today, I think Chinese workers are more disciplined than foreign workers. They work harder. And although the cost of hiring a Chinese has gone up, the output that they deliver has gone up too. And also they deliver an awful lot of hours for their salary. We must not forget that. I know foreign companies tend to hire Chinese and keep them for 40 hours a week and give them long holidays like we do at home abroad. But the Chinese, they hire the people, they give them basically the same amount of take-home pay, but they have them working 50 or 60 hours per week maybe. Less breaks and less costs. Yeah.
I'm just thinking of the Jack Ma, or he's called it, I'm blanking on it, but you just popped in my mind, 6 days, 12 hours, something. He had like 3 numbers, or 2 numbers. Well, I don't know, maybe I don't want to put you on the spot, but I think it was Jack Ma that says the Chinese workers are working 6 days a week, like 10-hour days or something. Or I think that is a quote, that Chinese work more hours than most of the world. I don't want to disrespect Europeans. I don't want to be this American just bundling all Europeans as one. I think Northern, like where you're from, Danish are harder worker, but I feel like Europe has didn't they reduce the amount of hours, or maybe that's Spain or some countries, and they're complaining that China's growing so fast. But you can say what you want as a person about China, but they work hard, and they'll do whatever it takes. I mean, look at any Chinatown around the world. You'll see this Chinatown, they're waking up at 5 a.m., taking fish from the markets, selling, look anywhere. Look at the Chinese restaurants, fast food, at least in America. And these people work day and night, whatever it takes. So.
Right. And they take pride in it too.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, to compare, let's say a Chinese worker today needs 5,000 RMB or $800 to take home every month. They don't mind working 60 hours for their $800, but they mind having less than $800. And I think basically foreign companies, they haven't really understood that this is how it works. Give them that salary that they need to take home to make sure that they can feed a family and have a life. But then again, their time is not valued as high as we value our time. So they're able and willing to give more hours, and the whole family system supports that. It's one way that Chinese companies get more competitive than foreign companies in China. It is simply that they squeeze out more hours of every employee while still paying them the same amount or less even.
I would agree with that. So then I think that's the hard part. I'll speak for myself. I think a lot of listeners are, we have a lot of Westerners come to China and try to apply our Western mindset of the 9 to 5, 8 hours, 1 hour lunch, go home, don't work, but you can't, right? I think you probably seen to teach that or, practice that in your agency, your company with your clients, I'm sure, but you can't just use your same model and business model into China, right? Like you're just saying, you have to have the team work extra hours, maybe even 6 days a week, even though how would you handle that if you have a European office and then a Chinese office, they work into 5 hours, 7 hour days or 6 hour days.
It's a choice. Yeah, it's a choice you have, whether you want to do it the Chinese way or doing it the foreign way. But it's a fact that we are losing out to Chinese companies when it comes to cost competitiveness. And we can either just say, hey, let go and that's it. Then we can compete at home in our home markets as long as that lasts. Or we can actually try to see how are things done here and try still in a way where we pay attention to corporate social responsibility, where we don't misuse and exploit people in a bad way, but try to simply accept that we are in China for the good and for the better and for the bad, and try to do as the Chinese. I would say if you want to be cost competitive in China in the long run, there's almost no way around also learning how to structure the cost structure in a company. And that includes how you pay your people and for how many hours. But if you're here and you can, if you have the freedom to choose not to compete against the Chinese in China, then it's fine to do it the European way. That's what we see most companies are doing. And actually, that's also their biggest problem going forward. It used to be so that foreign companies could compete because of novelty, because they were foreign. I don't know if you remember when you first came here, if a product was imported, it was good by definition, even if it was made in a joint venture. And if it was locally produced, the Chinese didn't look at it as being as good. I think that is changing, and I think it's changing in a way so that when a product is imported, in the minds of the Chinese, that is attached with some feeling of that product being too expensive. There's too much waste around it. Foreign companies, they waste, especially when it comes to overheads in their factories and in their businesses. And the Chinese, they know that after all. They know the difference between the Chinese and a foreign product is that materials are almost the same, right? And craftsmanship is comparable right now. But they know that foreign companies, they come in with overheads that are way higher than the Chinese. Actually, I would say most foreign companies, they operate at way too high costs in China. And therefore, it's hard to compete in the Chinese market. Right now, as I've said again and again, it's easy to compete against your own home base abroad, because when you are here, it's cheaper after all to produce in China, and therefore you have a cost advantage selling abroad. But you are somehow caught in the middle. Do you get what I mean? You are cheaper than producing in your home base, but you are more expensive than Chinese companies producing a comparable product. So where does it go from there if the Chinese, they start to compete abroad with their products, which is actually happening big scale? It's getting harder to compete against the Chinese. And one of the things we have to look at is how do they do it? How do they get this cost structure that allows them to do that? And I mean, there's one thing you can't ignore fully, and that is the way they pay their people.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I do agree, but at the same time, I know that especially, I mean, Europeans seem the most like about environment and work ethics, or in the U.S. too. But I think listeners might be thinking, so then if there's child labor or slave labor or unfair conditions or sweatshops or etc., that means I have to implement that overseas in my home market in order to compete now. Like, does that mean I have to transplant these like bad practices, or maybe? I guess it's a weird way to think, 6 days or 10 hours, but it's true. Like the West is falling behind, and I guess they have to just do what China does to compete globally in the future.
I mean, you don't have to copy bad things from China, but it's a definition of whether working 60 hours a week, is that a bad thing? I'm from Denmark, and we are drilling oil in the North Sea. I had a lot of friends when I was younger who worked on the oil drilling platforms in the North Sea. And I compare that with Chinese workers. A lot of them are coming from rural areas to the cities. They work in the factories. What should they do when they don't work, right? Compare that to a worker from Denmark working on an oil drilling platform in the middle of the North Sea. If you said to this Danish guy there, we have 40 hours a week, and we have a TV room where you can watch TV, and there's a little room where you can relax. The remaining time, you wouldn't get anyone to work there. They want to work when they are on the oil drilling platforms. And I think for the Chinese, it's the same thing. You see it on the construction sites when they build the high rises. People are there to work. They're not there to enjoy life. So does that mean that we don't treat them well if they work 60 hours a week, or do we actually give them what they want? They want to earn money. They want to provide for their family, and as much as they can. You talked about other things. I think we should never ever give in on safety in the workplace, and even the air and all this. Chinese have ways to save costs in the workplace where we would say no, that doesn't apply in our world, and we can't do that. But for example, I mean, I'm pretty sure you have visited Chinese factories, and they have no heating and no cooling in the workshops, right? There's a bit of money to be saved right there. And Chinese people, they go to work with 2 or 3 layers of pants and clothes, right? So if they go to work in a foreign company, they go to the dressing room, to the dressing room in the morning, and they will have to take off layers to go to work. And when they go back home, because they also don't have heating at home, they will have to put on those layers again when they leave the factory. A Chinese factory, they go there, they work like they come like they are with their 3 layers and whatever, and they work the day, and they go home, and they still have 3 layers on at home, because that's how it is. And we can maybe try to bring in Western style comfort to Chinese factories, but is that really necessary? And are we improving on something there? We think that we improve life when we have climatic control of factory shop or factory buildings where they don't. But it's just another way of doing it. I'm not hinting that you should turn off the heat or the cooling in your Chinese factories. But if you want to compare and understand where are the differences, that's one of these areas. It's totally accepted in China to work 60 hours a week. It's totally accepted that the workshops are not cooled in the summer or heated in the winter, or at least not to 21 degrees Celsius year round. That there is some fluctuation there. And there are other things too. I mean, we come in here with foreign managers that have children that go to school, go to international school, which is very expensive. The Chinese, they barely have English-speaking capacity. When you go to visit the Chinese factory, you will find very often that they have 1 or 2 people speaking English. That would be the girl in the export department, Mrs. Lin or Mrs. Wang or Mrs. Chen. And she will sit in and translate for her boss in the meetings. In foreign companies, we would start out saying, everybody here should speak English, so we understand each other. And when you hire people who speak English at the first layer of management level, then they automatically hire, according to that same recipe, further down in the organization. And you end up with overhead costs that are double or triple what they have in Chinese companies. That can be a problem in the long run. We tend to hire overqualified people in foreign companies just because we can.
This is an amazing conversation. I have a feeling we'll have to have you come back on soon. I'm trying to kind of figure out where to cut this one and get to a next episode. But I mean, I think we can go back and forth and feel like I'm sure listeners have a lot they would want to say. Maybe we can even have them give us some questions for a follow-up show. But it's very fascinating, and it's just really also the globalization in the world and technology and the internet and but it's also kind of created these new walls, right? Or these trade wars and these political kind of things which are trying to stop, maybe I don't want to say this specifically, but stop people from certain countries that are willing to work harder, do whatever it takes to grow their opportunity. I've gotten into some arguments with some friends over that, over dinners and stuff. But I think let's kind of we can maybe come for another show, or there's so much we can go on with that topic. But I think we can just kind of wrap up that part to say, if you want to compete in China, you can't come in with your expat packages and MBAs. I mean, that's one reason we can talk about Groupon all day. I was here. I was in the middle of that. I could have been one of their first hires. And I'm like, man, this is why they're going to fail. They're trying to hire me, like no offense to me, but they're hiring all these foreigners and shipping them in from overseas to do Groupon China. I'm like, this is crazy. So I don't think we have to get into detail about Groupon, but that's one reason, I think one of the reasons they failed. But let's talk a little bit about the opportunities. There's lots of listeners. There's always these young lads like you and I were that want to come into China, and now they're getting out of college or they're in their 20s and they want to take over the world and take over China. What are you telling them now, in this new decade?
Yes, you mentioned the word globalization. I think globalization, by and large, is over. I mean, globalization being that you have a production of something abroad, you copy that in China, and you produce the exact same thing in China at a lower cost. I mean, just taking advantage of low-cost countries. If that's the definition of globalization, then that's over. I think those who should be here are here, or there's not much inflow anymore of companies under the definition of globalization, the old-fashioned way. But things are changing, and what's replacing it? I think companies from abroad are coming to China to take part in a process that has to do with innovation. You see more and more foreign companies taking advantage of Chinese laboratory capacity to experiment and to develop, but also to set up businesses here that will develop new products for the Chinese market, not just taking old products in. And in order to be on the beat with new products in new markets all the time, you have to source a lot of development, R&D, from outside your own organization. And that's where the whole startup world comes into the picture. Today you cannot, with the pace of development of everything, you cannot hire 200, 500, 2,000, 5,000 R&D people, right? You have to crowdsource your development. And the most convenient way to do that is to nurture a startup culture. So you have around you hundreds and thousands of startups where you can crowdsource. I think that's the way Google gets around their development, and Facebook and Alibaba and Tencent and other big tech companies. They do it. They fish in the pond of startups and they also nurture that pond all the time. And there's a corner of that pond here in China that allows for foreigners to be part of that. But it's hard to be a foreign entrepreneur coming into China and establishing here. But the areas where there is something is intelligent hardware. It is in IoT, especially in healthcare maybe, and high-tech farming and agriculture. That's where I have my own business. Safe food and so on. Alternative proteins, as I mentioned. So there's still opportunities for high-tech startups, also where there's foreigners participating or even leading. But this being said, I think that we don't have a population of foreign entrepreneurs in China that matches. I mean, take a cross-section of foreign entrepreneurs in China, and you'll see that they are either students who came here to study Chinese and they want to stay. They don't come with a particular tech background, right? They are maybe they could be managers of foreign companies, and they are now asked to go home for reasons of cost saving and so on, or they're dismissed from their positions, or their contracts expire. So they are left over, and they want to find a new job. It's hard to find a job as a foreigner here, so they want a name card with something on it, so they become entrepreneurs, they start their companies. Or you can have spouses, simply foreigners marrying a Chinese spouse, and then they end up here. So the cross section of foreign entrepreneurs in China is not equal to a cross section of foreign entrepreneurs in the US or in Denmark, where you would have people from all walks of life with all levels of tech education and all kinds of backgrounds in actually entrepreneurship, right? So here it's more random, and therefore we don't have a good representation in China of foreign tech companies that are started in China, or even foreign startups that are started in China.
Yeah, you make me think of that joke. I think a lot of Chinese make fun of foreigners in China because they say we're the ones that couldn't make it in our home country and had to come here. I've probably heard that. There's some truth to that. I mean, but I've seen the different waves of foreigners, at least when I was down in Shenzhen. I saw this transition. When I first came, I was maybe the new wave, or I was the e-commerce. There was you probably know a lot of those old school trader foreigners that were, I'm trying to think of the correct way, but they didn't have any tech background because they didn't need tech background. They were really just kind of middlemen that could get a factory, and then they had friends or connections back home, and then they could make a phone call on Skype at night to the US or their home country, and then they could make some money in the middle. But that was going away when I started coming here. And but yeah, I feel it's true. There's not, of course, we don't have Silicon Valley entrepreneurs that are in China, and they're in Silicon Valley, or maybe in their home countries in Europe. But there's a lot to say about this topic. It's gonna be a hard one. I don't want to dig in too much, but I would agree. There's not a big enough pool of expats in China. But I think the main summary I would say is, like you said at the beginning of today's discussion, is have some kind of a competitive advantage. Don't just be a foreigner in China, right? Just by being a foreigner in China, you're not going to have an advantage. I've met some foreigners that come here, and maybe they have a family business. We've had some people on the show in the past that maybe their father or their family started a brand or product, and they came here to source and to do they have some kind of leverage. But yeah, I think nowadays you can't just say I'm a foreigner and I want to come to China and start a business and I'm going to be successful. I mean, of course, anything is possible, but yeah, I think you got to develop a skill, and probably develop that skill in college or in trade and in your Western environment, and then bring that here. Would probably be what I think is a summary of what you're saying, right?
Yeah, but you can also exploit your foreignness, so to speak. There are foreigners succeeding here because they're foreigners. You see some restaurant change that it might not be tech, but it's companies retailing food and also in fashion that develop very quickly because they understand the trend. Or they see trends developing outside of China a little before they develop here, and they are on the beat and get in, and they're quick, and they're quick to pull the trigger to get stuff done in China. So there are examples of foreigners who have made it in China a lot, actually. I'm just saying that the cross section of foreign entrepreneurs here doesn't really resemble what it is at home. We have way more people here that are entrepreneurs by chance or randomly became entrepreneurs because of other reasons than wanting to be an entrepreneur. But those that are here that succeed, they're fantastic. You know many of them, and I guess you're one of them yourself, doing business cross-border.
I've survived. I've been through a lot. But It's great, Peter. I knew this would be a great show. I'm sure listeners enjoy it. I mean, we could go on forever, I feel, but I think if you're welcome to come back on the show and let's talk quickly. You just released one
Definitely.
of your first books. I know we even chatted about your your um your road to writing books together, and Startup Runway, a step-by-step guide to turn a good idea into a great business, which I went through and I gave a review, and it was even for me a good refresher, and uh, not really about China to talk about China, but I think that's for anybody looking to start up. I mean, there were some things in there I even learned, and I wish I had known my 10, 15, 20 years ago when I was doing this. There's some terms and some lingo, especially with raising money and preparing business plans and business partners. So I definitely recommend people spend like a few bucks on Amazon and get an MBA or better than great info. And then you have another one coming up. I don't know if we have a title or something we can send people to about more about China business. So, and I don't know if you want to share about those, one or both books.
Oh, definitely, yes. Starting up a business in China, whether it's a subsidiary of a foreign company or whether it's starting a company from scratch, in China everything moves so fast, and everything is so new, and your value proposition or your customer, the way they have preferences and the way they choose is so different from abroad that I will argue that starting any company, whether it's a subsidiary of an existing company, will have to be treated like a startup. And for 25 years, I've been working with foreign companies, starting up subsidiaries and also companies from scratch in China. And over that time, I've come to work with some of the finest companies who are very serious about how they do things, and I've learned a lot from that. And over the past 10 years or so, I found myself involved also as a mentor for a lot of foreign entrepreneurs here. That could be students that want to stay on. It could be foreign managers here who want to quit their job in China for a foreign company and start their own. And I've become a mentor for them. And it's been so that I've had my traditional clients. They pay my bills. But I have all these entrepreneurs that I love to coach and mentor, and I meet with them in the coffee shops. And because of limited time with them, I try to structure my advice to them, and that has caused me to, over the years, to develop some checklists that I like to hand out to them and say, go through these steps and so on. And a couple of years ago, I decided to run a series of workshops on how to start a company in China here in Suzhou. And I set up this, it was 10 workshops, 20 lessons over 10 days, spread all over several months. And for each of these 20 lessons, I summarized what I had been teaching and preaching in an explainer video. I like to make these whiteboard explainer videos. So I ended up with 20 of these videos and decided that I should actually somehow try to write that into a book about how to start a company in China. I worked on that book for a couple of years, and I visited people in China. You were one of them. I think that was how we met the first time. I wanted to learn your perspective on some of the things. But I came up with a book that was way too heavy. So last year, at around this time in January, I decided to split my heavy book, How to Start in China, into two. One book with my 20 steps and my checklists and all the knowledge you need, in the information and the methodology you need to get started anywhere in the world in one book. And that's the one I called Startup Runway, that's now available in the stores. And the other one is a book that is much more China focused. It's about challenges that are different here from what they are in other countries. And that has to do with how do you start lean and mean? How do you compete in a country where you are foreign? And what is it about China that makes it hard? And how do you climb those mountains? So the next book, it's coming out in April or May this year, will be much more China focused.
Okay, exciting. Yeah, I'll definitely keep me posted, and we'll try to update the show notes. We linked to the first book to the Amazon page, as well as, of course, AsiaBase.com is your main consulting company. And how else can people reach you? I mean, I guess go to AsiaBase.com.
AsiaBase.com is the easy way. I also have Startup Runway has a website on its own. It's in my own name, peterrasmussen.com. In one word, peterrasmussen.com. There you can see what this book is all about, and you can also see those explainer videos that I mentioned. They're uploaded to that website.
Great. I'll link to your website too there. And I think, yeah, I mean, it's gone a little bit longer than my normal, but I think I had a feeling this would happen, which is a good thing. And thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, GoRemit. You guys made some amazing upgrades. I'm really happy. We got multi-user support at goremit.hk. So I just added Mindy on my team, my amazing HR and PM. 6 years with us. Thank you, Mindy, for putting up my craziness. I think you're helping QC this podcast. Hopefully don't cut this out, but goremit.hk for your cross-border payments. So I load up money from my Hong Kong bank to GoRemit, and I pay my team in the Philippines, and I send money to my amazing wife in Shenyang, and I send money to developers in Vietnam, making the GFA VIP forum, and all this stuff because GoRemit makes it really easy and decent exchange rate, commission off these transactions, so I don't have to have banks and wire transfers all over the place. Thank you, and check them out. GoRemit.hk. All right, Peter, thank you so much. I mean, we all have these war stories and losses of foreigners in China. I'm really happy to hear these successes and these insights from Peter. He's a true China entrepreneur and has been through so much and has helped so many people and has amazing books and is sharing and is mentoring people in the community there in Suzhou and in other parts of China. And I hope to see him again soon. We're working on a cross-border summit in Chiang Mai, and I can't commit. I mean, we got some verbal discussion with him, but he would be an amazing guest to get, and we have others lined up. Matt Brennan from China Channel has said he's going to come down talking about WeChat. I got some Lazada experts, of course, Amazon. There's so much Amazon everywhere, honestly. So we're going to start to expand to Southeast Asia. We're going to have some China marketing. That's what Cross-Border Summit is to me, seriously. It is about cross-border e-commerce, cross-border trade. I mean, I know Amazon's taking over the world and all this stuff, but we're diversifying. We want to help you diversify. But I feel when listening to Peter, I mean, should have learned Chinese. I mean, I can kind of get by, but, I think that's my biggest takeaway is you got to commit. If you're going to do China business and you're going to try to do a company in China, you got to learn Chinese. There's not really much a way around it. I know it's hard. I know there's a lot to it, but I would say that is pretty critical. Although I know many foreigners that speak very good Chinese that have gotten their buttocks kicked hard in China. Seriously, I don't want to name names because that's just not cool, throwing somebody under the bus. But I think anybody in China, I know these guys that speak fluent Chinese and they're talking to people, and even Chinese get their butts kicked, So I think it's strategy, it's mindset, it's insight. So I really hope Peter helped some of you all of you listening today. I mean, that's what it's really about here is helping you. I mean, I know it's morbid, and it's been bookmarked my mind. It's alive4.com, little website. Jasper on our team helped me program alive4.com/Michelini if you want to see how long I think I'm going to live. But I'm almost halfway, man. I'm almost 40. Can you believe it? I know I sound like I'm 25. I look like I'm 18 or something to you, but life is going so fast, and I think if you're going to do business in China, go in and immerse. People have been commenting on my video blog at mikesblog.com saying, oh, Mike, if you wanted to learn Chinese, you could have stayed in your wife's hometown in Shenyang instead of going to Manila. But, I'm taking a break from China, seriously. I don't want to offend sensitive Chinese people or other China veterans like Peter, but I'm taking a break, honestly. It's just drink some of my ginger tea. Hold on. I think it's good for the volcanic ash. Microwaved ginger tea because there's no water cookers here. It's not like China where there's little electric water cookers everywhere. There's microwaves in Manila. But I'm taking a break. A lot of people have been asking me. It seems like more and more people just started realizing I'm not in China anymore, like yesterday or something. Somebody's like shocked I'm not there. But I think we got to go where where our opportunities are, and I am really excited about Southeast Asia. You know, of course, I'm a partner here in Alpha Rock, and you know, I willingly came here. I felt like, hey, my wife's there. I know some people said Shanghai or Beijing or Shenzhen, but I wanted to come down here, see if I could add some value. I've been here just for a week, and I've already done some training for the team on Amazon, trying to increase some of our strategies. And there's the studio, the content studio we acquired at Alpha Rock. I'm going to help do some inbound marketing, online internet marketing. Actually, that's my passion, to be honest. So I came down here. This is my strength. I have an amazing team in the Philippines that helps make this amazing show. There's so many people I don't want to even say it because I don't want to leave somebody out. But Alvin, I've mentioned a bunch of times, always is helping us get this show patched all together with my rough words and bleeps. But yeah, we cut the F word. There's some shows we just recorded with the F word from guests, but we cut that out. Ginger tea. I got some Vicks vapor rub too after this. Shower and vapor rubs. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. I got a lot of insights. Cameron sent me messages. He liked my Uncle Gary. He really gets to understand the American mindset. Although I have to say, I don't think my Uncle Gary is a normal American. He's a special American, or a special human being. But he definitely riles up listeners. So I don't know. You want him on for a third time? Seriously? But I think I'm going to cut this short. I gotta clean up a little bit, take some vapor rub, drink some more ginger tea, recover from this volcanic ash in my body. I feel it in my chest. Or maybe it's just been exhausting going from Chiang Mai, Shenyang, China to Manila, Philippines in like a month. So that's it for this week. We got amazing shows. There's guests emailing me all the time that want to come on this show. I'm like, I don't even know why, you know. We just put this stuff out here. We just keep grinding. It's a grind, but I have an amazing team, and I can't wait to meet more of them here in Manila and other parts of the Philippines. We're going to do a team retreat in March. We've got the Cross-Border Summit coming up. Talking to April about making that even more amazing. My amazing wife. It's going to be in Chiang Mai, Thailand in November. Already getting amazing speakers and sponsors lined up, and just lots of work to do. Lots and lots of work to do. But that's what we like. I mean, everybody has work. It's just hopefully if you enjoy it or not. And we are enjoying what we do here. At least I am. Excuse me. Jeez, I'm dying here. All right. See, I got to go. I got to try to recover here. Take care, everybody. Thanks for listening. See you next week. Bye-bye.
To get more info about running an international business, please visit our website at www.globalfromasia.com. That's www.globalfromasia.com. Also, be sure to subscribe to our iTunes feed. Thanks for tuning in.